Hello and welcome, I'm Kaz and this is episode 138 of Everyday Property Investing. Now, buying or selling a property can be one of the most stressful events in your life. Add to this the backdrop of a global pandemic and economic crisis and you have the recipe for a major meltdown. Now, in today's episode, Lisa, Parker and I are talking about managing stress and anxiety during periods of uncertainty and how to maintain your cool as a property buyer or seller in the midst of the current COVID-19 situation. So welcome to Everyday Property Investing. Let's get started. Hello, it's Kaz here from Everyday Property Investing and Property Zest, and I'm happy to have Lisa Parker from Parker Buyer Advocates with me today. How are you, Lisa?
Very well, thank you.
This is something new for us. We had to dress up for this occasion, didn't we? Because usually we're very casual and we're just doing audio, but today
Yes.
we decided to do a bit of a video. So you've even put some lippy on and you're looking the goods.
Well, I usually do when I go to work, but because we're all in isolation, I must admit, don't think I've had makeup on for over 2 weeks. So this is the first in 2 weeks.
I know, I feel like everybody's working attire is probably a little different at the moment than it normally is.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny. I've been watching a few training sessions with a few real estate trainers, and somebody asked somebody to jump on. They said, "Oh no, I can't. I'm in my pajamas." And all of the people that were hosting said, "Me too." Like I've got boxer shorts on underneath the table.
Now today
I'm actually wearing legit clothes, head to toe.
Well done. Well, actually, I've got exercise clothes on the bottom half and work clothes on the top. And the other thing I should just forewarn everyone is that I do have 2 children at home with me, and I have threatened them with death if they show their faces, but sometimes children don't listen to you. So I just thought I'd let you know about that as well.
Yeah, well, I've hidden my 2 dogs away and closed the gates so we can't have any deliveries, because when the delivery guy comes, the dogs welcome and greet them with a lot of enthusiasm. So Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Now, today's topic, we're talking about, of course, COVID-19 is the big topic at the moment. And we thought we'd have a chat about what this is teaching us about buying and selling in stressful times, because as we know, buying and selling a property can be a really stressful and anxiety provoking sort of process. But at the moment, particularly, it's causing a lot of uncertainty and stress for people. So we wanted to talk about how we can maintain our cool as a property investor or a buyer or a seller at the moment, and some strategies, I guess, to help us find a bit of calm in such a time of uncertainty.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing a lot of questions on the forums coming up, on the property forums, from people asking these precise questions. So I think it's top of mind for people. And I mean, I find that real estate is never black and white at any time, irrespective of, whether or not we've got a crisis going on or not. And people really respond quite differently to being in a grey area. And one of the things they talk about when we talk about resilience training is being comfortable and being able to lean into the unknown and into those grey areas. And at the moment, we're all living in a constant state of grey because we have very little certainty coming through.
Yeah, and I think that it's really that uncertainty is really the key, isn't it? Often, if there's a decision or a direction and we know which way we're going, then we can move confidently. Whether or not that direction is good or not, we can still move. But with uncertainty, that brings about a whole different ballgame, because people often are stuck because they don't know how to move or what direction to go in. So like you were saying, a lot of people are affected differently by this, and obviously there's it brings up different fears for people. Certainly, there's, in terms of what's going on at the moment in the world with COVID-19, people have concerns around their health and the medical aspect of it. And then there's that other side of the coin, which is the economic aspects of what's going on in the world that's causing problems.
Yeah. And some people just get into, which is very, very easy to do. It takes a lot to tame the beast that is our mind and to control what we do and don't think about. And I know some people get into fearful thoughts, and those fearful thoughts unfortunately spiral once you get into a state of fear. Often that fear rolls into lots and lots of areas, and it picks up more and more and more things to be fearful about. So it's really important for us to recognize those patterns of thoughts and to be able to interrupt them. So hopefully some of our tips today will help that.
Yeah. And do you think, like we were talking about, different personalities can cope with things differently? Just on a personal level, how do you think your personality type deals with this sort of situation?
Really well.
Lucky you. Quickly share your advice.
I like change. I get excited by change.
Well,
And
that's not something I hear people say often.
I know. I like change. I like the opportunity for change. And I tend to feel that big situations like this bring about a lot of change for people.
Yep.
And I think that's quite an exciting thing. For a few years now, I've been thinking that as a human race, I feel that we are not really getting it right, and that we live very, very busy and very stressful lives, and that we are lacking balance. And I see possibilities for a lot of, we've been, I guess, pushed into a situation where we have to rethink how we're approaching things. And it's forced people to adapt really quickly and take action really quickly, rather than resisting, say, new technologies, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. We've really been forced into a situation where we need to actually take the opportunity and make those changes out of necessity. And I think that gives us an opportunity for great change in the future. So I feel quite optimistic and excited about the changes, and I like change. So for me, I'm enjoying the change in my work. I'm enjoying the change in my work environment. I feel good about it.
Wow.
Sorry, I
didn't
know that's
expect
not
that
good. A lot of
answer.
people don't like that.
Yeah, you're like the only person on the earth at the moment who is loving it. So
And my husband's the same. He's really
Wow.
enjoying it as well. So
Yeah.
but I think we have learnt over the years and practiced being extremely comfortable in the unknown. And so it is a lot easier for us because of that. And it really just comes down to being feeling secure, feeling safe, feeling confident when we have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
What about yourself?
That's interesting. I'm a different personality type to that. Although I don't mind change, I'm very much a forward planner. And so when you spring something on me, I don't like that. And I don't like having to change very quickly. I like to plan things out and, nut out how this is going to work and what my pros and cons are, and then plot my little path forward. And obviously this is a very fast moving and changing environment, and we haven't had that opportunity. But the way that my personality type, and the other thing I do is I do think of all those worst case scenarios, all the I don't know, employment, all the careers I've had in my life have always been about planning worst case scenario and mitigating the risks for those. So I've been an intensive care nurse in my past, which is all about working out what's about to go wrong and preempting that. And then when it does, you're ready for it, but you're hoping it doesn't go wrong, obviously. So it's sort of planning for the worst, hoping for the best. And even I was a project manager for a long time in software development. And as a project manager, you're planning something out in the long term, and you have to adjust to changes quickly that happen, but you're looking steps and steps in advance to see what could possibly go wrong and mitigating the risks. So that personality type for me, like I look at this situation of what are all the things that can go wrong here in terms of business and health and personal well-being and all those sorts of things. And I think of all the worst things and I plan for them, and that alleviates my stress, the fact that I've planned for that, But the problem, I think, is if your head gets stuck in that thinking and ruminating on the worst case scenario, that's where people struggle. Whereas I'll think about it, nut out what my actions would be if those things happened, and now I can relax because I know I've got a plan if it happens. So that's how my personality type copes with it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand who you are as a person and what works for you, and what strategies put you in the best mental state and emotional well-being. We definitely think about things that could go wrong, but we probably think about the most immediate things, and we don't stress about, you know, catastrophic things. So we kind of deal with the here and now as much as possible and look at the most probable things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
And then plan for it, get out. And then once we know what our plan's going to be, if that's happened, then we just drop it and we don't think about it again until it happens. And then we will action those plans. So, we do a little bit the same, but
less of the catastrophic. So I like a good catastrophic thought process for a while. That I think that's always entertaining.
Yeah, well, I actually am really impressed. I mean, I know a lot of our colleagues in the industry, I'm so impressed by their forward planning and forward thinking, and it's just so smart and a great way to approach business and, you know, to have those skills. So I think it really does come down to your personality and how we need to work best.
It's really interesting just to hear two different takes on it. I'm sure, you know, whoever you speak to, it's not a question I've actually asked someone about until now, and it's really interesting to hear your take on it. And
well, I can't really share how I feel a lot with people because it tends to rub people up the wrong way a little bit, press a few buttons. So I think people in general would prefer that I was stressed, because I think there's an inference that maybe I'm not taking it seriously, which is absolutely definitely not the case whatsoever. We're taking a lot of precautions. As you know, I'm pregnant right now, so I'm hypersensitive to what's actually going on. And, you know, I take my little gloves to the groceries to do my grocery shopping. We've got a system. Lachlan grabs everything off the shelves and puts it in the bags. I do not touch the bags. I only touch the trolley, and then I put the trolley back, and we've got a whole system planned. So I am taking it very seriously because I've got a baby to protect. But I'm not stressed or worried. And people are coming up to me and saying, gosh, you must be extra worried right now, because obviously they can see that I'm pregnant, and they're assuming that my whole world's about to fall down. And I just have to escape the conversation quite quickly, because it's not how I feel. And I don't want to engage in a conversation that's going to plant seeds of worry where there's currently not seeds of worry.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. And that leads us nicely into what we wanted to talk through today was we had 7 strategies that would help you find your calm during a period like this of great uncertainty. And we're bringing it back to this specific circumstance, but it could be applied in any other period of uncertainty as well. And we're also trying to bring it back to obviously property and investing in property, or buying property, or selling property for that matter as well. So we're going to go through these 7 strategies and have a little chat about each one of those. If you want to kick us off, please.
Yeah. Well, I think the very, very, very first thing is to be focused on what we can control. We're talking about speculation. We're talking about forward tripping or future tripping. And some people future trip in a positive manner. Some people future trip in a negative manner. And I think it's about being very conscious about how you choose to let your thoughts unravel. And, you know, you were saying earlier that for you find peace by future tripping and working out what you would do if each of those scenarios played out. Once you know what you'll do and you have a plan, you feel at peace. And for me, I'll do it with the most immediate and obvious things that are about to happen, but I won't future trip too much, because then I spiral into overwhelm and feeling quite negative and feeling quite fearful. And so for me, I control the amount of input that I will think about at one time, and I will just action that before moving on to the next thing. So I think it's really important to control what we're thinking about.
So you're trying to focus your thoughts on what you can control in this moment, and that's such as how much you watch on TV or listen to or read about things, for example. So controlling your own input is an aspect of that. Also controlling your own movements. You talked about going to the supermarket as an example. For you can control how that exercise pans out and then makes you feel comfortable to do. When it comes to property, focusing on what you can control is I guess assessing your own situation and determining what your actions can be. So for example, if you're looking, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. If you're looking to buy or sell, you can focus on what's important to you right now, what's your current situation, to determine whether it's the right time for you, rather than worrying about where is the market going, what's it going to do, I don't know, do I stop, do I, whatever. You can actually focus on where you're at right now and what you need and come up with your own action plan.
Yeah, like just shut down all of the noise and bring it back to you and your circumstances.
Yeah.
And if you need to buy or sell right now, then accept the fact that you have to buy or sell right now. And so therefore, how do you maximize your position, either in the buying or selling, and how do you cover your risk? They're the things that you have a certain amount of control over, but you don't necessarily want to be absorbing all of that external noise that's going to provide a lot of negativity potentially, and a lot of conflicting information, which causes you to be unbalanced. If you have to sell or you have to buy, I think the very first thing is to accept that you have to sell or have to buy at a time that might not be in your mind the best time to do it. But acceptance of that and then moving forward and blocking out everything else is, I think, a really good strategy.
Yeah. So that's a good one then, to focus on what you can control. And then we touched on this second one here, is to stop yourself from ruminating about what you can't control. So that's obviously the progression from, as what we were talking about before, is you can't stop yourself from thinking about things. You can't stop yourself, you can't stop your thoughts, but you can stop yourself from ruminating, as in going around and around in a circle in a way that isn't useful. And that's where, you can think about things, but the point where it becomes rumination, it starts to become unhelpful to you.
So what would be the signs for you that you're ruminating?
If I'm starting to feel overwhelmed by, I'm constantly thinking about it. I'm constantly looking it up on the internet, or I'm looking at the news and just watching it, and I'm feeling hopeless or overwhelmed about the situation, then I know that, okay, that's enough of that. Is what I'm doing is constantly reading this helping me in any way? And also, I tend to think about, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Because I like to think about that and have a plan for it. But sometimes if you are thinking about worst case scenario and the plan for it doesn't look appealing, and then you get stuck in that, oh my God, all this stuff is going to happen, and you have to pull. I think that it's a trigger when I start to feel a bit hopeless or overwhelmed by it. I stop and think, hang on a minute, is what I'm doing now, is this really going to eventuate? I don't actually know. And is it helpful that I'm running over this 500 times when I've already worked out what I can or can't do? It's time to just wind back at that point, I think. So I think a lot of it is, sorry, go.
So you mentioned that you don't feel that people can control their thoughts. But you say that, when you catch yourself ruminating, you'll have that conversation with yourself and stop yourself from going down that. So do you think that's a way of controlling your thoughts?
It's a way of controlling them. I don't think you can stop unhelpful thoughts from popping into your head. No. But if you can recognize when it's become an unhelpful thought, I think that's the key. Because if you don't recognize it, then you're off down the rabbit hole. And then, it's a runaway train. Before you know it, you're getting all overwhelmed with it. But if you can just go, hang on a second, and if you can catch yourself out in that, that's when you've got an opportunity to change the track of what you're thinking and what you're doing. And whether that's to go, okay, well, this isn't helpful. Why don't I stop for a minute and do something else, like a pattern interrupt? Like, I might go out and go for a run now, listen to some music. And then, so I can come back and think about this later, but I'll do this now. And that interrupts that pattern, that unhelpful pattern.
Yeah.
Or even if you just stop your thoughts about that for a minute and go, okay, well, that might happen. It's worst case scenario. How realistic is it that this is going to happen? And you can try and challenge some of the unhelpful thoughts. So there's two strategies, is to, recognize and challenge, or recognize what's going on and do a pattern interrupt and do something completely different. They're two things that I do.
Yeah, I think a pattern interrupt is super important as a backup measure when you catch yourself and you're not able to control it and stop it. The pattern interrupt, I find, is really, really handy. For me, I'll do one of two things to pattern interrupt. I'll either change location.
Yep.
I'll get out of the physical environment that I'm in, where the thoughts are happening. And so if that's happening at home, for example, I'll go for a walk on the beach, or a walk in nature, or a walk around the block. to stop myself from being in the environment where the thoughts are happening. Or like you said, I'll choose a different activity to put my time and attention to. And I find that physical exercise is a really good way to leave it behind, you know, like it's almost like you're walking or running, or, you know, you're physically moving the energy or the thoughts that you're having from your body.
Yep. No, I definitely think physical exercise is definitely one of the things that I do frequently. And well, I do it frequently anyway, but I do it frequently as a good way of, you know, if I recognize that I'm not in a good headspace, whatever I'm doing, then exercise I think is a great thing to do. A little tricky for some people though, if they're locked in their houses. So you have to maybe be a little bit inventive, creative. I was going to say, because sometimes I think doing laps of your balcony or something isn't that exciting, but there are ways and means. So that's number 2, then, to stop yourself ruminating about what you can't control. And number 3, we've got create a plan, take action, then let go. Do you want to talk to that, Lise?
Yeah, so I think regardless of, you know, I think there's probably going to be 3 different personality types. As an overarching rule, you're going to have your full-on planners who delve into scenario A, B, C, D, E. They've got spreadsheets. They've got scenarios that are going to come under, you know, A1, A2, A3, A4. They're going to have, you know, 20 scenarios that they're thinking about, and they're really going to delve into it and map the whole strategy out. And that's going to make them feel better once they've done it. And then you're going to have the people who avoid and don't want to face what's happening because it feels too overwhelming. And then you're going to have the people who are more inclined to be, I guess, in the here and now and do a little bit of planning and a little bit of thoughts, but then come back to the here and now. So I think there's probably 3 overarching personality types there. And I think the risk for the first group is obviously spending 2 or 3 weeks in hibernation in the room with their spreadsheets, thinking about all of the scenarios to such a big degree that it's just constantly on their mind. So I think recognizing your personality type in how you deal with stressful situations is super important, and finding that balance. So I don't think it's healthy to completely change your personality. I think there's positives and negatives to every personality style. And it's about just reeling it in and finding the balance. Now, typically when we're in partners, we've spoken about this before in other podcasts, we typically attract a different personality style to our own, and we both deal with things differently. And usually through the process of that relationship, if it's a harmonious relationship and you're learning from one another, you both adapt and learn from each other, and your extremes come into balance because you're learning from the other person. So you're still utilizing your strengths, but you're not allowing yourself to tip over into the negative aspects of your traits, if that makes sense.
So in terms of creating a plan, take action, then let go. So what I think of when I think about creating a plan is that you can assess your own situation, and then you can make a plan regarding your working arrangements, for example. You can make a plan regarding how you're going to socialize or not socialize for that matter. And you can make a plan about your financial situation and what you can do in certain circumstances. And like you said, like, assess your situation to put your plan in place, start taking action, but then the let go bit to me is really important. You've still got to recognize you're not in control of this situation, realistically. And it's good to have a plan, and it makes you feel good, but you can't hold on to it with a grim death, because everything might change in an instant. So when it comes to buying property and stuff, if you need to make a plan on whether this is the right time for you to buy or this is the right time for you to sell, then you need to maybe have a think about all the different aspects, and which we can touch on a little bit further here, and then put your plan into action. But just be aware that it's going to, potentially things are going to change along the way. So don't, hold on to it for grim death. So
yeah, I think the control aspect, I think when we when we come up with a plan and we cling on to it with that level of control, because control makes us feel better.
Yeah.
We don't like operating in grey most of the time. We all seek to have certainty. We all seek to be able to know what's about to happen, when it's going to happen, and then what you're going to do when that happens.
Yeah.
So that control aspect, I think, is the biggest key for people, is learning to let go of that control once you've got a plan in place.
Yeah.
And you're taking action steps to then let it go, because if things do change, you adapt faster and you change. When something happens, you react. You're able to change your tactics and your strategies a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Rather than if you're holding on to it with control, it takes you a few days or a few weeks to actually let go of the control and then find other strategies. So I think that's a really good point, is just to be mindful of that control aspect.
When it comes to buying and selling, like, I did want us to talk a bit more through that whole aspect of, is this the right time for you to buy? Is this the right time for you to sell? What are the problems with selling or buying right now? But I sort of feel like, I think we can't do it justice in the context of this chat. So I think we might do that in the next episode, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I think I'd like to go delve into
Real
that
deep.
in a bit of detail. So we'll chat through that. So for the moment, I think number 3, create a plan, take action, then let go. Leads us into the next one. Number 4, adjust your plan as circumstances change. So that's exactly what we're just talking about. You need to have a plan, because you need to have a way forward. You can't just sit there in your uncertainty bubble forever. But there's no point just making your plan and then seeing it through while circumstances around you are changing drastically. So when there's a situation that's rapidly changing, your plans need to be equally as flexible, I think.
Yeah, I think flexibility is key, and if you see the state of play change, then I think we get through things quicker and we have more resilience when we're able to adapt really quickly.
Yeah.
And, we have to do that all the time in our job, because when we're buying real estate, we've got the sales agent, the vendor, and other buyers, as well as our own buyer, who are all going to do their own thing. And at any point in time, we can predict that that person is going to do that, that person's going to do that, and that person's going to do that. But if one of those people change the state of play, then we have to adapt super quickly and then be able to change our tactics to match what's happening. So having a number of strategies and a number of approaches in mind.
Yep.
So if that happens, I'll do that. If that happens, I'll do that. I think is really, really important. And you just change as quickly as circumstances change. If you're able to accept that circumstances have changed really fast and then find a new strategy, I think you get through times like this a lot easier, and it's less stressful.
Yeah. Now, I've got an example of that with someone I'm working with currently, actually. These guys are based overseas, and we are under contract on a property, but we've just been hit with a couple of big things all at once. Number one, we found out they're liable for 7% additional stamp duty on the purchase due to being foreign purchases. So that's a big chunk of change. It was like an extra 50 grand of stamp duty on top of the already existing stamp duty.
Yeah.
So that was potentially a deal killer. And then the second thing that happened was these guys are overseas, and the country they're in went into full lockdown with military checkpoints. So they need to get bank loan documents certified, but they can't leave their apartment to do that. So we suddenly, we're suddenly on our one track heading in one direction when bang, we've just been hit by these things. So, we had to change our tack very quickly. And what actually happened, it was quite interesting, was we managed to get a letter from the employer that gave them the right to get through the military checkpoint to be able to sign documents. So that was that problem solved. But the second problem was obviously that whopping great stamp duty bill. And what we discussed and discovered with our solicitors and with the client was that although stamp duty is generally paid by the buyer, it's actually both parties are liable for it. So if the buyer doesn't pay it, then the Office of State Revenue can come after the seller for it. So potentially anybody can pay the stamp duty. It doesn't have to be the buyer. So if we tried to negotiate money off the purchase price for this property, then the stamp duty actually doesn't go down that much. So let's say we knocked 35K off the purchase price, stamp duty only went down by 2K. That's not that helpful. But what was helpful was saying to the seller, look, we're happy to continue this purchase with the current contract price, but what we want you to do is contribute $20,000 to the stamp duty. And so that's a completely different way of negotiating. That's not common, or it's certainly not common here that I've come across. But that's how we had a plan in place. We were executing our plan. These circumstances happened, and we had to change the plans quickly and think, outside the box a little bit. So
it's really interesting that you say that, because I've noticed even in my own negotiations over the last few weeks with for clients that I've been doing unusual negotiations as well, things that I wouldn't normally think of or need to think of. And I've had some really obscure conditions in my contracts, and it's kind of opened my mind as to new possibilities. And what's been really interesting is that it's been the clients who have been throwing these really wild ideas out there, saying they say to me, this might be completely stupid, but would it be possible to do X, Y, and Z? Because they're coming at it from a fresh perspective. They're not stuck in how we usually do things. So they're bringing all of these really wacky ideas, which are actually
it's funny you should mention that, because this particular circumstance and the stamp duty issue, it was actually the client who came up with that as a potential solution. And I was like, well, that sounds like it could fly. Let's talk to the solicitor. And he's quite an educated person in the realms of the finance area. So he sort of studied the rules and said, well, why don't we try this? And I thought, that's really good. Yes.
Clever. So this environment is making us better, more versatile, and have more tools in our toolbox. It's making us better advocates.
I agree. All right, we better crack on to number 5. So this is a really good one, I think. Find healthy, nurturing distractions.
Oh, yes. One of the things, I know that we're going to speak about this in the next topic, but one of the things that I have particularly found very, very stressful, I'm on social media quite a lot, and that's where I consume most of my information. I get articles that come up, and that's where I spend a lot of my time reading. I'll probably read, usually outside of this environment, I read anywhere between 15 to 20 articles a day.
Wow.
During this event, though, I've shut down from reading things, which we're going to talk about in a second, but the subliminal messaging that comes through just by scanning what people are writing and talking about has left me feeling overwhelmed and stressed at times. So I've had to remove myself from social media for periods of downtime and replace it with something that actually nurtures me and lifts me up and makes me feel better. So that's a really good strategy, I think, for people who are feeling overwhelmed, stressed, if they're feeling their energy coming down, or their mental well-being, or their emotional well-being. It's a good sign to assess what we're doing, work out where the source of stress is, remove it if it's possible, or reduce it, and then work out, well, what would make me feel really good right now.
No, I agree. And I think even in terms of the whole isolation that people are in, I think they need to find healthy, nurturing distractions in that environment as well.
That's true.
So a lot of people are using this opportunity to get all those jobs done that they've wanted to do. They're cleaning their pantry, and they're doing their garden, and they're doing all these things. But I think you need to be mindful that you need to do some of these things need to be healthy and nurturing, as you point out. So I'm trying to make sure that even with my kids and stuff, we learn something new, or we do something new. So we're looking at my son. They've got this really cool website called OutSchool, and they've got online classes, and he's going to do a class that was all about, I don't know, making zoology and Minecraft or something like this. So something that's fun. Like, we don't want to get stuck in our homes, feeding ourselves with all of this negative media, and then just cleaning all day, because that's not fun. Like, you've got to find something that you want to do that you enjoy, like you said. So I've been, you know, I have neglected my piano. I used to learn the piano and I've neglected it. So now I've taken it up again because I'm stuck at home a lot. So I'm making sure I sit down and play the piano and just do some nice stuff like that.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
The other thing I think is, you know, don't bombard yourself with too many things. Like I said, don't make it all about jobs. Maybe just pick, you know, 3 things a day that if you got those 3 things done for the day, you would feel happy, and make, you know, one of them might be a work thing, one might be a home thing, and one might just be a fun thing that you want to do. So ways to make yourself happy.
Yeah, I've kind of done the same thing as what you've just suggested, and I've segmented my day so that so one of the things I'll do is reach out to a friend and check in and see how they're doing, so connect with somebody.
Yep.
The next thing that I'll do is I'll take myself for a walk, whatever time of the day that is. I'll walk the block or whatever I need to do just to get a little bit of fresh air. I will do my work projects, so whatever my main priorities for work projects are, and then I'll do a house thing that I really want to do. So last week I cleaned out my pantry and it looks lovely. So, so yeah, I'm balancing it out holistically so that I'm not just doing one thing all day, every day.
No, that's brilliant.
I can't change my environment. When you and I are usually out on the road, we're usually everywhere. So being at home is quite a contrast. So I can't change my environment, but I can change what I'm doing within that environment.
Yeah, definitely. Number 6, we've got curate your experience. And I think this alludes to what you were talking about before. For example, in social media, you can curate your experience of this situation by, you know, even monitoring the frequency or duration of time that you're spending looking at media and things like that, particularly social media. Like, you can also choose the sources that you're obtaining your information from. Are they reputable? Are they factual sources, or are they just fear mongering? And I think social media has a big impact on this.
Yeah, and I think even I'm very conscious about what I will allow myself to read and engage with, and what I will see and block and keep moving on. And I found that even though I was curating what I was going to participate in, the subliminal messaging that was in front of my face all day, every day, it did get in, and I had to take a step back and, you know, nurture myself and feel a little bit stronger within myself again, before I was exposed to all of it again, because it started to chip away. So I think we underestimate subliminal messaging in our environments. And I think if you're quite an intuitive or an empathic kind of person, you're more prone to being affected by what people are saying or doing, or the images that you are being exposed to. So, yeah, I agree with you. Just curate where you're going to go to get your information. For me, I was tuning into the Prime Minister's updates every day when he did an announcement after a cabinet meeting. I've actually now stopped doing that because I was finding that the announcement, followed by all of the speculation in the media and in forums, followed by the uncertainty of what did he mean by this, this, and this, and this, I found that became a source of stress. So now I've stopped even listening to that. Yeah,
no, that's a fair call, Sane. And that number 7, that was our last one then, is tune out, stay out, or block out negative influences.
Yeah. So for me, when people are coming up to me and seeing I'm pregnant and saying, oh, wow, you must be really, really stressed right now, I don't engage in the conversation at all. I do not answer that question or engage in what they've said to me. I change the topic completely, change the topic, and do not go in. If I go in to combat what they think I should be feeling or would be feeling, then I'm engaging in that thought process that's not helpful for me.
Yeah. I'm a bit, obviously I'm not pregnant, but I'm a bit that way when it comes to, there's a few people on my feed on Facebook who are heavily into the conspiracy theories and doomsdayers and a bit of, I don't know, racial slurring. I guess,
Right. Okay.
which I'm really not into at all. So I tend to skip over that. I've blocked a few people, so I don't see any of those posts anymore. And I'm not interested in engaging in any of that stuff. And social media for me is a big one. I was tuning in like you to the Prime Minister's things every night, and I found myself, I'm sitting there watching, waiting to hear this. And I thought, what's the point of listening to that 45 minutes of waiting for 3 hours for it to happen, and then 45 minute speech to get 3 key points that I was looking for out of it. I'll just wait until the news hits the media and somebody's summarized it for me the next day. So I just do that now.
I've been doing the same thing.
Yeah.
One of my family members is very stressed throughout this process because they're at home and they're just constantly watching the news, and so they're just consistently getting that message. We were actually watching something. We very rarely watch TV, but we had something on regular TV the other day, and straight after the show had finished, one of the news channels started with a COVID, 1 hour special, and I was in the kitchen and could hear the television, and the tone and the energy that comes through with the news.
Yes.
I could feel the difference between what we were watching and then what it became.
Yep.
And I'm obviously a little bit more sensitive to it too because I'm pregnant. So anything that's negative is heightened for me compared to normal. I'm usually quite a sensitive and empathic person anyway, but now it's heightened. And I've said to my husband, just turn it off. I can't hear it. I don't want to hear it because they're not reporting facts in a conversational way. The whole tone is implying it's heavy. It's quite heavy and it's quite worrisome, and I won't expose myself to it. So I think we have to be careful about being in the habit of sitting there and consuming that, because I find that it can stay with me for days.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember going down to visit my dad and his wife, and they have, I don't know, my dad's obsessed with the news. So they have this 24-hour news channel running on their giant television, which is massive, all day long. These people just news. And I just found it like it was creating anxiety for me to have to listen to it. And it's like, this is before this whole thing happened, obviously, because you can't travel now. But I was just getting stressed sitting there with this giant screen television blasting news at me for the whole day. So I just, there's something about having, I think it's just the tone of it, and it creates stress for people.
Yeah, I remember I used to listen to the radio a lot. You and I are in our cars a lot driving around. I used to listen to the radio, and probably about, I think it was 10 years ago, I stopped listening to the radio because I'd find myself listening to songs and feeling happy and enjoying the music, and then it was constantly interrupted with news updates and all of the things that were happening around the world. And I found that what was happening around the world weighed very heavily on me. By the end of the day, if I'd been in the car all day, by the end of the day, I was worried about what was happening in China or in Afghanistan or wherever it is in the world. And there's literally nothing I can do about those circumstances, but it would upset me and worry me. So I made a conscious decision at that time just not to expose myself to things that I have no control over.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. All right, we better wrap it up, Lisa, because we're going to run out of time.
No worries. Our
7 strategies, just to recap: focus on what you can control, stop yourself from ruminating about what you can't control, adjust, hang on a second, I missed one. Create a plan, take action, and then let go. Adjust the plan as circumstances change. Find healthy, nurturing distractions. Curate your experience. Tune out, stay out, block out negative influences. So that's our recap on our 7 strategies for coping with uncertain times or finding your calm in all of this.
Okay, and then we're going to do another segment very shortly in regards to whether or not buying and selling in this environment is the best thing to do, and some hints and tips in regards to that.
Yeah, definitely want to dive deeper into that, all the aspects of what buying and selling could mean in this market and whether it's the right thing for you to do. So I look forward to chatting with you about that on the next show.
All right, thanks, Kaz.
Thanks, Lisa. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for watching and for listening to Everyday Property Investing. We'd love to hear your questions and experiences. Please head over to our Facebook page and feel free to leave comments or ask us any questions. Thank you to my guest, Lisa Parker from Parker Buyer Advocates in Melbourne. And I'm Kaz Young from Properties S Buyers Agency and Property Management in Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. See you next time and take care out there.